I'm delighted to welcome you all here. My name is Barbara Tusling, and I'm director of the Smithsonian Associates. And on behalf of our office and the Creativity Foundation, this is going to be a wonderful evening, and we're so glad you're here with us to honor this year's Benjamin Franklin Creativity Laureate. Tonight, we're celebrating the attributes of creativity, innovation, and inspiration. And through the Creativity Award, we recognize the most gifted and creative thinkers, innovators, and catalysts in the arts, sciences, humanities, technology, and public service. And through the Legacy program, these individuals have an opportunity to inspire young people that they'll be meeting with. I've heard the phrase force of nature before, but I'm not sure I've ever met anyone for whom that really was the proper description. But Johnnetta Cole, in fact, is a force of nature. And it's our great privilege to have her here as a colleague at the Smithsonian and as our special honoree tonight. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Johnnetta Cole.
It was 9 years ago that my father, Benjamin Franklin Kahn, launched the Creativity Foundation, which, as the foundation's logo says, was inspired by the creativity of Benjamin Franklin and his devotion to public service. My grandparents, immigrants from Eastern Europe, embraced their new country and named their youngest son after the remarkable 18th century founding father, who was a businessman, diplomat, inventor, scientist, and public servant. From a young age, my father took his name to heart, and Franklin's spirits, ideals, and methods were an inspiration to him throughout his life. The idea of the Creativity Foundation was born during a conversation which took place on a park bench on the mall, somewhere between this museum and the Ripley Center. The former director of the Smithsonian Associates, Mara Mayer, and my father were discussing the nature of creativity, which Johnnetta Cole so fabulously embodies, and the ways in which individuals in different fields attempt to explain and pass along their own creativity. This, my father decided deserved further cross-disciplinary exploration. So he decided to emulate his hero, Ben Franklin, who long ago convened a junto, a varied group of friends who met with Franklin to discuss ideas and issues of importance and launch projects to benefit the public good. My father, in his inimitable fashion, decided he would reconvene Franklin's junto, as he put it. He spoke with friends, Franklin scholars, and well-read acquaintances, and the Creativity Foundation's junto was born. That was back in 2001. In spirited cross-disciplinary discussions over the years, the Creativity Foundation's junto has helped define the goals of the foundation and is focused on exploring the creativity of individuals who've made remarkable contributions and lived admirable creative lives. The junto considers many individuals as they move towards selecting a laureate each year. To date, the laureates have come from music, public service, the humanities, physiology and biology, business, theoretical physics, the visual and theatrical arts. This year, we're honored to have an extraordinary anthropologist, educator, and mentor to thousands, Johnnetta Cole, whose work would have excited Ben Franklin, who is deeply devoted to promoting higher learning across multiple disciplines. Franklin was, as is Johnnetta, in spite of the fact that Franklin's own formal education ended at the age of 10. I think this is a good time for us to recognize, if they would stand, the members of the Benjamin Franklin Kahn's junto. Please stand, please, the junto. My father was also committed to inspiring and recognizing the creativity of young people across a broad range of disciplines. So he and his junto developed the Legacy program, which Barb mentioned. This program is our investment in the future. Young people are selected by their nominating institutions, not by the junto, based on each legacy institution's own criteria for achievement and creative promise. We are incredibly impressed by the intellectual, artistic, social, and humane accomplishments of the Legacy Award alumni and the current winners. Keep your eyes on these remarkable young people. They have extraordinary promise, a remarkable sense of civic responsibility, raw intelligence, good humor, and incredible creative potential. I'd like for all of them to stand, please, the previous winners and the current winners to be recognized. Over the years, the Foundation and the Smithsonian Associates have established an amiable and productive collaboration. On behalf of the Foundation, I'd like to thank the Smithsonian Institution and the Associates program staff. My dad was both a realist and a dreamer, a businessman and a romantic enthusiast who loved big ideas. Although he's no longer with us, his spirit infuses the work of his foundation. I'm delighted that all of you are here to imbibe the spirit of Ben Franklin and his namesake and share in this evening's celebration of creativity. And I know my dad would have loved to have met Johnnetta Cole. And so I'd like to present the official Creativity Award, the Laureate Award. Certainly. Take off my glasses. Which is, of course, an image of Ben Franklin. And this is a copy of a very famous medallion that was done during the American Revolution when Franklin was over there trying to raise money in France for our cause. And it's by a fellow named Nini. And congratulations.
Thank you very much, Lori. We miss your dad a lot, but I'm so glad you're carrying on his work, and thank you to the Junto also. It's now my delight to introduce Dr. Camille Cosby. An educator herself, as well as a philanthropist and documentary producer, Dr. Cosby is a longtime friend of Dr. Cole, which promises a very interesting evening indeed. She's the ideal person to join in a conversation with Johnnetta about creativity, what it means, the importance in their lives, and the importance in our lives. So, Johnnetta, Dr. Cosby.
Dr. Cole, I want to personally thank you for allowing all of us to learn something about your remarkable life. So here we go.
Thank you, Camille.
Dr. Johnnetta Betsch Cole, your ancestors are so very interesting, to say the least. For example, in 1901, your maternal great-grandfather, Abraham Lincoln Lewis, co-founded the Afro-American Life Insurance Company in Jacksonville, Florida, and became the first African-American millionaire in the state of Florida. What were the messages you heard as a child and as a young woman that guided you to achieve?
Well, I love that you begin with ancestors. If we ever forget where we've come from, we won't know where we're going. And so these ancestors of mine had a mighty, mighty, mighty task. They had to deliver a message that would counter the message of Black inferiority, of white superiority in Jacksonville, Florida, in those wretched days of legalized racial segregation.
And clearly they did.
They were effective. And so from Fafa, that's what we called Abraham Lincoln Lewis, a name he had to share with lots of Black men. My great-grandfather had extraordinary influence on me. And I remember to this day that he would always say, you've got to remember the 3 B books: the Bible, the bank book, and the school book. But I also remember that this man, with all of his material wealth, was an extraordinary public servant. And so from him, from my mom, from my dad, from my community, I not only got this message that was outrageous, this notion that the amount of melanin in your skin determined what you could do. I also got the message that I had to help get rid of that. The other message, and this is the third one I would lift up now. You know how, Camille, senior citizens, older folk, they say something once and then they just keep saying it over and over and over again. My folks said it, and I came to understand it, that the ultimate expression of living well is doing for others.
And you have done that.
That message, they kept saying it. You know, I've heard other people's version of it. I think our great, great hero, Muhammad Ali, puts it this way. He says, doing for others is just the rent you got to pay for your room on earth. So, yes, the folk that I have come from, they taught me well, and I'm so grateful.
And you are a paradigm for many in that respect. So thank you, Abraham Lincoln Lewis and all the others. And speaking of segregation, in 1936, you were born into the cruel environment of legal segregation, which unfortunately was institutionalized by the United States Supreme Court in 1896 and was the law until 1954. In retrospect, what effects did legal segregation have on your young life?
Mm-hmm. It was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. I mean, the most obvious things that folk of my generation remember: the water fountains, the bathrooms, the lunch counters. But here's something, my dear sister friend Camille Cosby, that perhaps ties your first and second questions. Abraham Lincoln Lewis was so prominent in Jacksonville that the public library bore his name.
Fantastic.
But let me give you the full name.
Okay.
The A.L. Lewis Colored Library. Mm-hmm. And it won't surprise you that the books that were there were the hand-me-downs, just as the books in our schools were the hand-me-downs.
Were the books by Black authors?
By the white students who no longer needed them because they got new books.
I see.
And so look at this contradiction, that I am going into a library that bears my great-grandfather's name, but it's the colored library. I had the joy on Friday of welcoming a group of librarians who came to the National Museum of African Art. And I told them this story. And then I said, you know, it was all right. Because once I was inside, that librarian, Alda Bradham, opened up the world to me. And I would get on that magic carpet that books can put you on. And I would go to places that had no signs for colored only. And so when I think about the heroes and the sheroes who have grown me up, I remember librarian Olga Braddock,
Who was an African-American woman?
who was an African-American woman.
Wonderful, wonderful. But Dr. Cole, you were a baby when you entered college. You were only 15 years old. How did you feel as a 15-year-old student, undergraduate student, at a college, and what college did you attend?
Well, first of all, one of these days, I don't know when, I was hoping it was going to be tonight, I could be Johnnetta and not Dr. Cole.
I'm not going to be chastised up here.
Dr. Cole will now speak. I had pushy Black parents. Remember, Camille, I had the privilege of knowing your dad before he went to glory.
Yes.
And I still have the privilege of knowing your mom. They were pushy with you,
Yes.
just like mine were with me. So one day, I am told that I'm to go downtown and take a test. And if I pass this test, I will go to Fisk University at the end of the 11th grade. I won't finish high school. And my parents explained that this was an experiment. It had been going on with young white students, early entrants. Now they were trying it with Black students. And this was a Ford Foundation program. Remember our brother Maynard Jackson,
Yes.
the great mayor?
Yes. Of
Maynard
Atlanta.
went to Morehouse at age 14.
Oh.
All right, so I go down to take the test. Camille, I did not want to go to Fisk University, all right? I wanted to finish school in my community, have my senior year. But I was so stupid that I didn't figure out I could flunk the test. So I passed the test. And the next thing I know, I'm at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, one of our historically Black universities. And of course, a university so associated with a group of unending creativity, the Jubilee Singers.
That's right.
Fisk Jubilee Singers. So that's how I ended up at Fisk.
But then you transferred to another institution as an undergraduate.
I did, and the reason is this. I was John Thomas Betsch Sr.'s baby girl.
Yes.
And there is something about a papa and his daughters. I have watched your husband with 4 daughters
That's true.
who have got him just like this.
That's right.
Well, that was the year that my father died, and I was convinced that my world had ended. And so my mom and my sister connived, and they said, we've heard about a program, it's called a domestic exchange. You could go to Oberlin and you'd be near your sister. And my sister was at that time a double major in voice and piano in the Oberlin Conservatory. So I went to Oberlin College, and I never went back to Fisk.
And what did you major in?
Well, I went there to major in zoology and do pre-med until I walked into a classroom one day, and when I walked out, I was going to major for the rest of my life in a field I could barely pronounce. I mean, I took this course I could read, Introduction to Cultural, and then I had to sound it out. Anthropology.
Yes.
There was no anthropology major at that time at Oberlin, so I majored in sociology. And, you know, Camille, I want to tell you something. The man who so set my intellectual life was a tall, lanky, white professor named George Eaton Simpson, who one day in that classroom answered questions I had about where did we as black folk come from? Why did we have the music that we have? Where did our folklore really come from? And that extraordinary professor had done his field work in Jamaica.
Oh.
And one of the greatest gifts I have ever been given is that when Professor Simpson passed away at age 93.
How long ago?
That was, we're going on 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
He left for me, I guess you'd say willed for me, his original slides from his field work in Jamaica.
My.
You know, that kind of mentor, mentee, teacher-student relationship is something I keep working on. And I know that somewhere out there tonight is an extraordinary professor of engineering who is my mentee. I call her Shadow because she has shadowed me on several occasions. And I know that somewhere out there is Shalonda Hardy, who is my official intern from the Duke Ellington School of the Arts.
Fantastic.
I know I've got to pay back what all of those teachers in those segregated schools in Jacksonville gave to me, what Professor Simpson gave to me, and yes, what the great Melville J. Herskovitz gave to me.
And of course, you went on to get your graduate degrees in anthropology.
Yes.
Mainly because of those people you just mentioned,
Yeah.
including Dr. Simpson. Did he have his doctorate in anthropology?
He was formerly a sociologist.
Oh, sociologist,
But he had
yes.
studied with Herskovitz, and he
see.
really was in many ways an anthropologist.
So you created your own degree, your own discipline.
Well, actually, at Oberlin, I majored in Professor Simpson.
Yes, okay, okay, okay.
Because, and then, you know, in those days, Camille, it still happens, when that extraordinary bond takes place between a professor and a student, one of the things that a student has to give up is a little bit of her decision making. It was clear I would go from Oberlin to Northwestern to study with the great Melville J. Herskovitz, because that's who Dr. Simpson had studied with, and I had to do it.
Of course. What a wonderful mentor.
He was.
But then you, after getting your degrees in anthropology in graduate school, what has been the connection or a helpful aid in terms of being a woman of color and an anthropologist?
Well, I just finished writing something, so I'm gonna quote myself. Here at the Smithsonian, at the Natural History Museum, we will shortly present an exhibition called Race. The exhibition was organized by the American Anthropological Association. And I'm very proud that here at the Smithsonian, we're presenting this exhibition. And I'll give you the punchline. We anthropologists say, it's not a scientific concept, we ought to get over it. Especially since there's only one race.
Yes.
But I was asked to write something, and I was asked to write something that would be rather personal, tell a bit of my story, my encounters with race, with racism, and with anthropology. And one of the things that I wrote in that very short article that will be published in Anthro Notes, I said this: when as a young anthropology student, I understood that race is not a scientific concept, but that racism is a powerful reality. I felt vindicated. I knew it intuitively. I knew that this was ridiculous. That some human beings, based on the amount of melanin in their skin, would be less worthy, less smart, less accomplished, inevitably, than white folk. Didn't make any sense to me, and I felt so vindicated.
Great. Well, what is more unbelievable is that so many people believe that.
It's true.
Yes. Now, in light of that, you have consistently voiced your rightful views on racism, sexism, and any violations of human rights. What have been the consequences and rewards of being so public about your thoughts?
Well, it is true. From A.L. Lewis, from my Latin teacher, I gotta find a way to tell you that story before we end. From my Latin teacher, Miss Morris, from my first grade teacher, Miss Vance, from Professor Simpson, yes, from Professor Hirshhorn, and going back, Mary McLeod Bethune, the great educator, from my mom, from my dad, from my Brownie troop leader, from my Sunday school class. I was told I had to speak up and I had to speak out. And that not to do so was shameful. So, you know, it wasn't like I had to go and figure out how to do this. I had no choice. There are consequences. As you know, as I know, as Dr. Bill knows.
Yes.
Speak the truth, as Mari Evans, our great poet,
Yes.
calls upon us to do. Speak truth to the people. But sometimes there are consequences. And for me, one of those consequences, because I had done field work in Cuba, because I had looked at issues of race and gender and class, and because I had said some positive things about what was going on in Cuba, I really got pretty red-baited.
Oh, yes. I
It
want to
was
ask you about
during
that
the-
later.
Oh, I scooped you. And, you know, I've been all right with that.
Yes.
I've been all right whenever there is criticism of my work, as long as I know that the work was done with integrity and that the work speaks the truth as best I can know it.
And when the smoke clears, the truth will still be there, no matter
will.
what, right?
It will.
Yes. At this time in the United States of America, women still earn 80 cents to a man's dollar. And women's bodies are used to market just about everything, even toothpaste. What do you say to a young woman or a girl about their rights as human beings and their self-perceptions as girls or women?
Well, my sister Camille, you know how extraordinarily fortunate I have been to be in in fact, the only two historically black colleges in our country for women. Before that great honor, I always knew, just like our Native American sisters say it, we women hold up half the sky. And so once you know that, you become really outrageously forward about helping others to know it, to claim it, and to live it.
Yes.
And the power of sexism, of notions of gender inequality are so strong that they can help our girls and our women to think less of themselves in the same way that racism can do that, in the same way that heterosexism can do that. And so we really have a righteous battle to fight in this country of ours and in the world for the safety of girls and women. You know,
Yes.
when we look at what's going on in places in our world and in our own country,
Absolutely.
the violence against girls and women. And so it's pretty hard for me not to do whatever I can to help girls and my sisters, women folk, really claim who they are and where they're supposed to be.
And the extension of that, of your statement, is, and I've always been curious about this, during the 1960s movement, civil rights movements, women really stepped back and did not accept public recognition for their work. Why do you think that happened with them? These were educated women. These were very active women. Why did they, so many of them, not all of them, Dr. Haidt certainly never did that, for example, but why did so many of these beautiful, educated women, a lot of black women are included in that, step back and let the men take all of the credit?
I think two things happened. First of all, the sisters who didn't step back have simply not been acknowledged. I'm talking about Ella Baker. I'm talking about Septima Clark.
Yes.
How about Joyce Ladner? How about white sisters like Ann Curry?
Yes.
Just not acknowledged. And so when the story of the civil rights movement is told, it is a story of heroes when there were sheroes right there.
There were many.
But I also think that somehow many sisters bought the notion that we had to get the civil rights of black folk done, and then we come back and we take care of women folk. You see, I don't think that's the way freedom works.
No, obviously.
I think we're talking about, just to use one little piece of intellectual jargon, there's an intersectionality there among race and gender and class and sexual orientation. They are all connected. And so what we find is that whatever rights have been gained for African Americans, we African American women need to realize we got a lot more to do to get ours.
Yes. Now, Johnnetta.
Oh, thank you, Camille.
You clearly, I mean, this audience knows it too, you have a strong sense of advocacy pertaining to giving to others in whatever way one can give. What advice will you give to younger generations about the importance of unselfishness?
Ooh, I wish I could scream it. I wish I could just hug my young'uns with so much love that they would get it. I wish I could demonstrate the joy of it. Because it really is true that the ultimate expression of being truly human is not what you do for yourself, it's what you do for others. There are just so many special ways to say that. I'm very, very fond of the words of Elie wonderful force, who was a young boy, we all remember, suffered from the Holocaust.
Yes.
Was in a concentration camp. And like our President Nelson Mandela,
Yes.
came out of that, not bitter, but more committed to peace with justice. Elie Wiesel says, our lives do not belong to us alone. Our lives belong to those who need us the most. And I just think, there's this boomerang effect. Here you are and you're giving to others, whatever is the way you do that. You're in a shelter for women who are the victim of domestic violence, or you're in a soup kitchen, or you're after school reading to little pumpkins, or you are, in an assisted living home, bringing just delight to one of our elders. And you think, oh, I'm just so good. Look how I'm just being so good. I'm just giving.
Yes.
Now watch the boomerang effect. Because while you are giving, that is going to come back to you like a boomerang. And you're going to just get so much more than you ever thought you could give. It's
And the young people have to believe that.
we've gotta convince more young people of that. But let me tell you, when a young'un gets it,
Yes.
it's a powerful thing. And earlier today, I had the incredible joy of being with 5 young'uns. I respectfully but affectionately refer to young people that way. These are the legacy awardees. Y'all know I'm talking about you.
Yeah, there they are, right there. Yeah.
These young folk understand that it really has to be both. They've got to be accomplished, they've got to be successful, but they've got to be of service.
Yes.
And they don't become laureates unless they do both.
Good.
So what
a
I
good
think
message.
is I'm not the best voice to deliver this message. I believe in peer education. And so what was so incredibly exciting was to hear how these 5 young'uns and those in the classes before them, they're teaching that message by the way they live their lives.
Good. Despite the bombardment of the opposite messages, and that is to move ahead at the expense of everybody.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. Now, as you mentioned earlier, you were the president of Spelman College. In 1987, no other African-American woman had preceded you. There you were. And you're the only person to head 2 historically Black women's institutions, and the other one being Bennett. What specifically do you want historians to record about your leadership as a college president of both institutions?
Well, can I tell my Dr. Bill story?
You can tell your Dr. Bill story. I think.
I want the books of history and her story to know how Spelman College rose to be, at least by one account, the #1 liberal arts college of the South. How Spelman women have gone on to just soar to the height of their possibilities. And the way to know this is to know the Dr. Bill story. I was appointed to the presidency of Spelman College in the 107 years of that college, the first African-American woman. Didn't make any sense. 107 years it took.
Yes.
So I am barely appointed, and I'm just feeling both responsibility and joy. And I was about to go to a meeting of the senior staff. And my wonderful sister assistant, Ms. Marshall, said, Dr. Cole, I know you're heading to the meeting, but you may want to take this call. It's Dr. Bill Cosby. I said, does the sun rise in the east? So I get myself ready, and I pick up the phone, and I said, Dr. Bill, how are you? He said, oh, I'm doing pretty good. He said, Camille and I were just watching you on the television. So I said, Dr. Bill, you're pulling my leg again. No, I watched you on the television. He said, no. Camille and I were watching you. You on with Henry Ponder, the president of Fisk. I said, oh, yeah. You're right, Dr. Bill. We taped that, but I remember now. Then I said, I'm sorry. He said, Camille and I were wondering, do you think you could use $20 million expellment? I'm going to say again what he said. Camille and I were wondering, do you think you could use $20 million at Spelman? Now remember, I had just referenced Fisk. I said, oh, Dr. Bill, I don't know what to say. I remember that you and Sister Camille gave $2.5 million to Fisk, and it really saved Fisk. And now you're telling me $2 million for Spelman? Your husband said, girl, can't you hear? I said $20 million.
Sounds like him.
It was the largest gift that any African American family had ever given for the education.
But worth it.
And as a result, it's an extraordinary place today. I just greeted in our National Museum of African Art a group of Spelman students, 40 of them,
Oh, fantastic.
on spring break. And when I asked them to introduce themselves, I was hearing things like, my name is Kalila Smith. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I am a chemistry pre-med major with a minor in Chinese.
Go on.
These young women, if you aren't careful, they will be
Yes.
on the top of a building. I always feared this at Spelman. I would come back from a meeting, they'd be on the top of the building, all of them like this, flapping their wings, because
Yes.
they believe that they can fly.
Thank goodness.
And then at Bennett, it was, I'm on a roll. I'm gonna tell another Dr. Bill story.
Oh, Lord. Okay, I think I'll sip on this.
I had failed retirement several times, F minuses. And I thought, now this is really it, I'm done. And then I was asked to come to meet with Dr. Maya Angelou. It was a very tough period in my life. I really had a very traumatic experience. And she said, oh, come, I'm going to read poetry to you and cook. She's a fabulous cook, as you know. And I'm going to help you work through this trauma. So I just, like a little kid, just said, okay, here I come. She kept her word. She cooked for me. She read poetry. We talked about what I was going through. And then, with that voice, Dr. Maya said, "Johnnetta, God is calling you to go to Bennett. Why aren't you listening?" Dumb. I had forgotten Dr. Maya Angelou was on the board of Bennett College for Women.
That was the God. Yes.
So I left her thinking, I don't want to do this, you know. But I'm kind of, I don't know. So I called up Dr. Bill. And I said, "Dr. Bill, I need some counsel." He said, "Well, the doctor's in today, so come on." And I said, "I'm being asked to go to Bennett College. I'm being asked to do another presidency. Should I do it?" He said, "No, unless it's going to tickle your passion."
That's right.
And I kept thinking about that, Camille. It was the best advice anybody could be given. Because, you know, you've got to believe in something. It's got to tickle your passion. That's when you'll do your best work. That's when you'll do your best work.
But I think you've known that.
I try.
Now, in terms of all of these talking heads who have jumped all over you because of your field work, while on President-elect Bill Clinton's transitional team for education, labor, arts, and humanities in the early 1990s, you were severely accused of being anti-Semitic and having communistic connections. How did you deal with all those spins and distortions in the media? Because they were extreme.
They were, to say hurtful would be such an understatement. I remember when it happened. It happened in this city. You're right. I had been asked by President-elect Bill Clinton to be on his transition team. What an honor. And my portfolio was education, labor, the arts, and the humanities. I asked permission from the Spelman College board to do it. They said, go, 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 go. And I will never forget the experience of that red baiting. But I also will never forget the extraordinary support that I received from around this country. First of all, the Board of Trustees of Spelman College stood by me. At the time, I was serving on the board of one of the pharmaceutical companies. Are you going to forgive me, Camille?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. That corporate board stood by me.
Good.
I was on other corporate boards, but perhaps more than anything else, folk in this country of ours who are my real heroes and sheroes came to my defense, like the great Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, like the good doctors Bill and Camille Cosby. And so while it was the most severe experience I've ever had in a public arena, it was also all right, because I knew who I am. And, you know, it can be all right when you know who you are.
That's right. Good. I'm glad to hear that because I had never asked you this question.
Oh, and you decided to ask it right here in front
That's
of all
right.
these people.
Now, Johnnetta.
Yes.
You are now in your 70s. You have raised your sons, you have grandchildren. You have a new career as the director of the Smithsonian's Museum of African Art and a relatively recent marriage to a fabulous man, James D. Staton Jr. I hope he's there somewhere.
I think he should stand
Miss
up.
JD? Yes. You can see who is responsible for Johnnetta being so radiant. How are you balancing this extraordinary phase of your life?
Oh, well, first of all, I want to reference a dear friend's work. Mary Catherine Bateson, who is, in my view, an exceptional scholar, an anthropologist, a linguist. Many will know her as the daughter of Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson. And some will know her book, Composing a Life, which I'm very proud to have been one of the women that she wrote about. But I want to talk about this recent book and the first one. She's also written a book now called Composing a Further Life. And Catherine talks about what she calls our unintended, I'm having an intellectual interlude. I got it. Our unanticipated longevity. Tell you the truth, Camille, in another era, I shouldn't even be sitting here. I should have gone to glory, all right? And Catherine says, look at this gift that we've been given. One of my dearest friends, JB, am I right? You and I, in our 70s, have this unanticipated longevity. And then she asks, what are you going to do with it?
Yes.
Now, the other
Love
book,
that.
Composing a Life, Catherine says, let's get rid of this notion about women juggling. What a horrible notion, you know, because something is going to fall. And I remember when she was interviewing me that I started talking about the notion of improvisation. You know how much I like Black improvisational music.
That's right.
Jazz.
Yes.
And she said, you know, that's one of the gifts that a woman can give to herself, to improvise. So between trying to continue to improvise and trying to take advantage of this unanticipated longevity, I'm having myself a righteous life.
Indeed.
But I do want to say
Yes.
that it is such a gift to have James David Staton Jr. in my life. And I think I have figured out the secret to why, as a man, he is unusually nurturing and loving and unthreatened by me. And the first reason, I think, is because for all of those years, he was a single parent, raising his son. And Camille, Olivia Hanks Cosby, I'm going to tell you something. When a man becomes a mama, some extraordinarily wonderful things can happen to him. And then I think the other explanation is his mama, Mama Emma, who I knew before she went to glory. And one of the things, and I really want to just tell this, it just popped into my head, I have to do this, because this is about creativity. And while I'm getting this award, and I'm so proud to get that award, I want to pay tribute to women, and there got to be some men too somewhere, who really should be getting the Creativity Award. Let me tell you about Mama Emma. My husband and his 8 siblings, there were 9 of them, they're all still on earth. I have 6 drama queen sister-in-laws. These 9 young'uns grew up in Tarboro, North Carolina, the Po part of North Carolina. So Po, folk didn't have the second O or the aura. But they also grew up in that era of racial segregation.
Yes.
So there were no museums, symphonies to go to. But on Saturday night, this is what Mama Emma would do. And many a black woman did it in that era. She would gather all 9 of those young'uns, and they would have theater.
Oh.
And they would get up and recite poetry.
In their home.
In their home. To this day, ask one of my drama queen sister-in-laws or my 2 brother-in-laws to start to recite. And you will get James Weldon Johnson.
Wow.
You will get Paul Laurence Dunbar. You see, when we talk about creativity,
Yes.
we somehow begin to act as if this can only be a possession of the highly educated, of those who have gone into the best of environments.
Yes.
Tell me something more creative than a black woman teaching her children poetry. And when they finished that, others would come to sing. So,
That's fabulous.
you know,
Go on, JD. It's mother.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like myself, and I actually am not sure why I'm among these people, okay?
Oh, please.
I mean, come on. But it simultaneously acknowledges that creativity can start mighty early.
Yes.
And as you know, Camille, the mom of 5 highly creative children.
And patient.
But think
And sleepless.
we start to snuff it out.
Yes.
Here these kids playing, and one says to the other, now I'm gonna be a cucumber.
That's right.
And you're gonna be a red pepper. And somebody comes along and says, you can't be a cucumber, you're a girl. You know? I mean,
Yes.
there is that unbelievable creative spirit in children.
Oh, yes.
I mean, in my own, one of my 3 sons is here. But the one I want to reference is the youngest. And Aaron, you remember this. Day after day, he would come back, and it was a family ritual. We had to ask him to empty his pockets because he had been walking along the railroad track. And he had been picking up these things. And then he would come back and he would spin these tales about these things that were in his pockets.
Yes.
Some were alive, some were not alive. I mean, there is just, you know, there's just something about about being in touch with your own bad, creative self. And Camille, the reason I wanted you to do this interview is because I knew that we could switch at any moment and I could talk with you about your own creativity. Now, anybody who's gonna sit in a chair looking like that.
Let's
No.
Don't you go there.
I have already gone there.
No.
But Camille, I'm serious.
This is about you, Johnnetta.
Yeah, I know. No, it's about us.
No, it's about you.
And it is from you that I've been privileged to learn a lot about creativity. And let me tell you what I mean. And I hope this doesn't sound as if I'm bragging but Camille, you know, the way that you will have a table set, the way that you and Dr. Bill, as really serious collectors of African American art, will present it. I mean, to me, it's delicious creativity, especially because you get such joy in sharing it. And if you are creative and you hog it, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you, Johnnetta. But my last question has to do with creativity, and you just took it away. No, not really.
All right.
Okay. But tonight, as everyone knows, you are the recipient of the prestigious Benjamin Franklin Creativity Award. I know now that you are the only anthropologist to receive this award, and you're the only African American to receive it so far. In what way does anthropology relate to creativity?
Oh, I love that question. I think in multiple ways. First of all, because here is a discipline that is really about, I think, putting on a very special set of lenses that allow you to see humanity. And it allows you to see both those things that separate us, because we've invented these separations, but it also allows you to see this extraordinary well of things that we human beings have in common. And so, even though I'm not a practicing anthropologist, I never have ceased to wear those glasses.
Yes.
And if you're wearing them, the better to see, I think, to love, to appreciate, to respect the human condition. You are bound to be encountering creativity. There are no people on the face of the earth who are not creative. And so I love the fact that I have been able to take my training as an anthropologist and to walk into a place that is just overflowing with the creativity of people of the African continent. It's a very special place. Our Smithsonian National Museum of African Art, as you know, distinguished board member of the African Art
Here we go again.
Museum.
Okay.
So, yeah, I love being an anthropologist. But if I hadn't been an anthropologist, I probably would have become an art historian.
Really?
Because, you know, the passion's always been there for the arts, particularly of African folk and African American folk. And so I don't know how I got this fortunate to land where I did, but I'm pretty happy that I did.
And you have been consistently respectful of human beings. And that is the foundation, I think, of your life. Regardless of what discipline you had chosen, what profession, you still would have been respectful of human beings. And I thank you for that. Thank you.
Camille.
Yes.
I think our world outside of this building may be a little uncertain tonight, but I think we all have the certainty why Johnnetta was given this award for her creativity throughout her life, and continuing, of course, right here at the Smithsonian. So thank you so much, Johnnetta, and congratulations. Dr. Cosby, thank you so much for joining us. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
I just want to say two more things. Among the many things that my mom would say over and over and over and over again, she would say, "A woman will be known by the company she keeps." And tonight, Laurie, where are you? I have just been given this extraordinary honor of keeping company with these laureates of other years. I am really, really very moved and very grateful. The other thing I want to say is that your foundation is in cahoots with the Smithsonian Associates. And my sister friend, Barbara Tusling, you had something to do with this. And I am just so grateful to you. And one of the ways that I think we could all express our gratitude is sign up to be members of the Smithsonian Associates. And obviously, I can't end without turning to my own colleagues. You know, sometimes I think the most creative thing you can do is to turn to creative people. The notion that one can be truly effective alone is nonsense. And so my colleagues, and I'm looking at Anita and Bridget and Eddie, and my eyes aren't focusing enough to see all of I know that Annette is here. I can't tell you how fortunate I am to work every day with colleagues who are creative, who are committed, and who are passionate about their work. So thank you, my colleagues at the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art.
That's right.
Thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate it. And again, congratulations, Dr. Cole. Thank you, Dr. Cosby.